walking on the lawn, and they couldn't because they had just been practicing walking on hardwood floors or on tile. So we were like, well, how can we do something to fix that? And I don't know if Katie would like to speak about her experience.
Yeah, so when Ha had come to speak to our class, we had just gotten off clinical. And while I was on my first physical therapy clinical, I was thinking, you know, I'm really frustrated that we can't take patients outside. There's a whole bunch of legal barriers, and also the way outpatient clinics are set up where they're double booking patients, there's barriers with that. And then after talking to Michelle, she had also had a similar personal experience and had heard from the other PTs. So that's when we really started getting rolling with the C.A.T mat. So the C.A.T mat is the community ambulation tool mat, and it's modular mat pieces that are designed to simulate an outdoor terrain. So right now we're looking into sand, grass, and gravel. We're actually at the UMass Lowell Nerve Lab. We're going to be resuming testing there in August for the development of our prototype. So just to give you an idea of what the devices that we're creating.
Yeah, COVID unfortunately got in the way. We were ready to go in March, and then everything happened, so we haven't been able to get in the lab since then. But so Ha did a really good job at mentioning like things that we've won, but we just wanted to give you a little list of things that you can apply for, and you can do all of these things if you put the work in and you put your mind to it. So like she said, we won honor roll mention at DifferenceMaker Idea Challenge. Then we also won the Foley and Laudner Attorney Services Prize, which I feel like you guys may or may not have won by now. And then we won first prize in the convocation competition, which you can apply for if COVID isn't a thing. I'm not sure if that's happening actually, but and then Beantown Throwdown is a really cool competition that MIT puts on. So if you get connections through MIT Cambridge, that's a really great place to get connections with, because they have incubation services and things that have helped us a lot. Then we also won Best Biomedical Device at the DifferenceMaker Engineering Competition. You could win a bunch of different things as long as you have an idea where an engineer is helping you. We received the $5,000 grant from VentureWell, and we're going to be pursuing a $20,000 one soon. We also have created a provisional patent, and we are applying for a non-provisional soon. That may be something that you guys are interested in, and you'll have to do in the future if you're creating a product. And if you have questions about that, you can ask us at the end. And then we've also created a website, social media, on all those things that you guys can check out if you're interested. If you need ideas for web sources, we actually have someone who's kind of a web specialist on our team, so we can help you with that as well. So have you guys, I'm sure that you've talked a little bit about iCorp Spark. Have you actually kind of delved into it? Do you know what it is?
You feel free to just raise your hand.
Yeah.
Or use the thumbs up.
And we can unmute you. Yeah. Okay. Well, oops, hold on. So iCorp Spark, if you aren't familiar, it's this great program that UMass Lowell has paired with MIT Cambridge. So iCorp is basically a grant through the NSF, the National Science Foundation, and UMass Lowell has created this program to teach upcoming business owners and entrepreneurs about customer discovery interviews. And we honestly didn't even know what customer discovery interviews meant at that time initially. We just kind of thought like, oh, we've talked to PTs, we know that this is a necessary product, so we're just gonna dive in. And then Michael Lane of iCorp Spark, he's someone you'll become very familiar with if you do the program. He explained to us that that's definitely not the best route to go, and that you should actually do some customer discovery interviews and just find out all of the avenues that you can go to with your product, because you might actually be boxing yourself in and not realize that you can actually like reach for the moon and all the stars, because your product can do a lot more than you initially thought. So just taking all this into consideration and just kind of thinking about iCorp Spark, and if you want to apply for it, we're going to go into our presentation now that we did for iCorp Spark. So this first slide that I'm showing to you, they basically had a setup of slides that they wanted us to present. They wanted to see certain things that we had accomplished by the end. And this was our final presentation. So they wanted to know the name of our product. So we gave them the C.A.T mat, and then a little description about what our mat is, what our team is, and then we kind of also put an image here of what the mat would look like. And then we also put on the total interviews that we did during this class. So during this class, they expect you to do a total of at least 12 interviews. And we ended up getting 14 completed because, you know, it's always good to go a little above and beyond. Okay, there we go. All right, so then they wanted us to list some of the key interviews that we had done. So the first one was Bill Farina. He would be a buyer of our product. So we actually found, at first we were like, oh, we're just gonna talk to PTs. But then we realized there are people like management who are in charge of buying different products. There are people who don't really have a say in buying products, so they actually like wouldn't be able to help us as much. So there were just a lot of different avenues to go down that we hadn't realized. So he was one of the different avenues that we kind of started to explore. He was a corporate director of rehab services for multiple clinics, and he said that he would only purchase products that have research or evidence to support the benefits that it can have. So that was when we were like, okay, so then we really need to start doing research in a lab, and that was when we started getting in contact with the nerve lab. He also said cost is more important than space. Expensive products don't sell well in a lot of clinics, and that is very true. They kind of just want to make sure that they're getting what they can for the money that they spend. And then user friendliness is very important, and current issues with community ambulation and gait training is that it's really difficult to mimic different varying terrains in the clinic. So he really thinks that this is a need, and that if we can get it done, it would be a good product to have.
So for the next round of interviews, because in iCorps you do multiple rounds where you're meeting with your mentor and they're giving you feedback on your questions, what kind of answers you're getting, and how you should evolve your questions. And that's something you should always be looking at is how can you improve your current set of questions? That was one of the most beneficial things for iCorps for us, especially because in the beginning, as clinicians, we're thinking about how can it benefit the patient? How can it benefit the physical therapist who's using it? Whereas physical therapy is a business, healthcare is a business, they're focused on the money. So with Kayla, we asked a couple different questions. She is a user, so she would be the physical therapist using the product with the patients. And she works at a neuro outpatient clinic. So we asked how many patients do you think require gait training? She said 100%. We asked a little bit more about how her clinic works, and they're owned by a doctor. So it's a little different than, say, a family-owned clinic. So she thinks that this gives her clinic greater purchasing power, which makes sense because they're connected to doctors. Doctors are going to bring in a lot of extra money to a clinic. So they might have a little more money to spend than another clinic. And we wanted to ask her about what is a must-have device versus a nice-to-have, because that's going to make a difference when you're presenting it to your boss. You know, this would be great to have, but if it's a must-have, they're more likely to buy it. So she was saying that a must-have device needs to be multi-purpose, and you're unable to mimic it with current equipment, and it's beneficial enough to the patient outcomes. So again, she was highlighting the need for research. And we also asked about her current issues with community gait training. And she said that it was difficult for patients to walk outside on the sand, and many of their patients have beach houses. So that was something else for us to think about, is like, maybe the client goes to Florida in the summer and they have a different setup at home. Like, how do you prepare them in Massachusetts for that setup in Florida?
So then the next interview that we highlighted was Mark Manfredi. So this was a new, interesting look because he is both a user and a buyer, because he owns a family-run clinic. So he does the buying and purchasing, but he also still actively treats patients. So as you can see, it's good to get a lot of different opinions from a lot of different populations. You want to know, like, is this product really going to work in this population? Will it work better in other populations, etc.? So he owns a privately owned orthopedic clinic, which is for like a lot of knee replacements, hip replacements, people who have sports injuries, things like that. He's a prime handler of budget and product purchases. And so they have an array of patient impairments there, including amputees and neuro patients. He said that joint replacements were 40% of their patient population and neurological impairments are about 25%. So that's still a good amount of people that would need something for gait training or learning how to walk better. He said that they have a strong referral system that consisted of 50% word of mouth, repeat patients and their families, 30% from physician referrals, and 20% from web reviews. And then, so he said that he had a really great example of a product that they don't find useful. That was a new question that we kind of implemented into this round of questioning. Because as Katie said earlier, your questions always evolve. And then also with each different population that you find, different customer discovery population, you should create different questions that are more appropriate for their population. So he said that the HUMAC Gait and Balance Analyzer, it's kind of like if you've ever played Wii Fit, it's like the Wii balance board, and it just gives you like different data. So he said it's difficult to use, difficult to administer, and very time consuming. And if you've ever been to PT, or even if you've ever just been to the doctors, they have maybe 30, 45 minutes with you, and that's it. So if this takes 20 minutes to set up, you've already gone through more than half of your appointment. So space and user friendliness are main pain points in his particular clinic. He said that he has turned away products before due to lack of space. So that was something we kind of started to consider. We were like, okay, our product needs to be kind of small and easily compactable. He said that he has a data collecting tool that hasn't been used in years because it's difficult to set up. And so if anything is difficult to set up and it's difficult to teach if it's not user friendly, he said he's not going to use it. And we kind of found that that was a trending thing by the end of these interviews.
So this is our business model canvas. For iCorps, we, for this PowerPoint, we only had to fill out the value proposition and the customer segment. So iCorps had us focus on one customer base for the duration of the program. So for us, we chose to focus on outpatient clinics to start, because we also plan on pursuing inpatient, home care, other sectors of the physical therapy business. So as you can see, our value proposition, it's pretty long. And we start with talking about patients as opposed to like the clinic as much. And we bolded our outpatient customer segments. We also had included other customer segments, but we just wanted to highlight the outpatient ones. And then if you go to the next slide. So what we learned from iCorps is they really want you to highlight the pain point. So this is a thing to a company that they're saying, like, we have this problem, and you want to say, I see that problem, and this is how I'm going to solve your problem. So for us, the pain point was there's not a device that mimics different outdoor terrains, which limits patients' functional outcomes. And for outpatient businesses, they are driven by referrals. So if they get more patient referrals or more physician referrals, they're going to get more patients coming into their business, which is going to result in an increase in revenue. So those outcomes tie directly into the referrals, which tie directly into the revenue. So our value proposition was that we're going to improve functional outcomes with the C.A.T mat, and that's going to increase those referrals, resulting in the increase in revenues. And as you can see, the customer segment, we added a new one after we did the interviews. We've had experience working in the clinics, but we're newly graduated, so we didn't know too much about the business aspect of it. So by doing those interviews, we saw that there was quite a few clinics reporting that they go through reps and consultant firms who recommend products. So that was a customer segment we were going to have to look into, because we, in these situations, would end up selling to the reps and consultants who would then sell to the clinics.
All right, so we kind of summarized our key lessons. This was another thing that I-Corps wanted from us, and it was also a good thing just to kind of reflect on what we had learned. So first of all, we learned that PT clinics acquire patients from mainly physician referrals, but also from word of mouth, including online reviews and social media marketing. We also learned that clinics want to see research before purchasing a product. That has been a thing in the PT industry for a long time. There's lots of articles about different products and how they work or if they don't really work, and studies are done all the time. And research honestly continues. So we kind of have to do our research and prove that our mat works, and then people will really start buying into it. And then also space, cost, and user friendliness are top concerns. We learned that from these first 14 interviews, and then in interviews we've done since then. These are just the things that we've kind of found to be a repetitive loop. But we find that some places think that space is more important. Some people think that cost is more important. So we've kind of been keeping a list of what different what populations feel is the most important. And then neuro outpatient report higher caseload patients who require gait training. This isn't really something that you guys would know, but we'll explain it to you. So neuro outpatient is mainly people who have strokes, have Parkinson's, any sort of neurological impairment, and they really do need help with walking on different surfaces. So it kind of makes sense after we've done a lot of these interviews that neuro outpatient would be our target market, but we have other markets to go to as well. A must-have item, basically it needs to serve a different purpose than equipment that they already own, and it needs to improve patient outcomes. So if they already have a product that does a similar thing, they're not going to buy it, you know? But if we can make a product that will actually make a difference, they will definitely buy it. So that's just something to keep in mind. You have to know the pain point. You have to know that your product will solve that pain point, and then you'll be successful. So a trend that we found is that they need higher tier employee approval for items that cost over $500. So a lot of places we found different price ranges where some people don't feel comfortable even asking for something that's $50. But we found that the norm is that if it costs more than $500, then you really need to ask higher ups for approval and actually have a meeting about it. So that means for us, we have to try and keep our costs lower than that. And then some clinics rely on reps and consultants, as Katie had said. So we didn't even know that that was a thing. We had no idea what that meant. We knew that there were online medical supply companies, but we didn't think that we would have anything to do with them. But after all of these meetings, we found that that was important to us. So kind of like takeaways from this is that these meetings will help you learn a lot. And we're still learning more and more every day because we have more and more of these meetings. So it's just a really good thing to do, honestly, is this I-Corps Spark program.
So what we still want to learn, we want to learn more about what is the common ground when it comes to pain points for physical therapists. So we want to work on finding those trends as we interview more users and buyers. Below we listed the customer segments that we still wanted to explore at the time. Currently we're still looking into exploring these. We've also added wellness and fitness to our list of potential customer segments. And that's something that can come out during your customer discovery interviews, is they might say, like, have you thought about this customer segment? And particularly when you're working with different mentors. When we did the Venture Well program, we had someone who used to work in the fitness gym business, and she was saying, like, that's something she'd be interested in if she owned that business still. So
Yeah. And even like we've talked to athletes and cheerleaders and things, and they're like, wow, I wish I had that when I had got injured. So even like sports teams and things like that are something that we can ultimately look into later on once we've done all these other ones.
So the big takeaways from this for us were how to think like an entrepreneur. In the beginning, as I alluded to earlier, we were definitely struggling with not thinking like a clinician, thinking as a business person. So this really helped us formulate more business-based questions. And that's something that was very beneficial when you had those revision meetings with your mentor. We definitely had a lot to revise after the first one. And then one of the important things they had told us is you want to find out what's a must-have versus the nice-to-have items, which I talked about earlier. A big thing for us in formulating the questions was how to reduce the odds of leading the witness. So you want to ask more broad, open questions. When we made our initial survey, we were 100% leading the witness. So that was something important to avoid because, when you meet with people, they want to be nice, especially when you're students. They want to tell you like, oh, you're doing a great job. Your idea is great. But that doesn't help you when you go back to sell to them and they say, no, we don't want it. So you want to find out what they truly want in the beginning so you can develop that product and be successful. And another big thing was identifying that pain point to base the value proposition off of so that you can clearly state it to the potential customer as you're explaining your product. So like Michelle said, and I said, we're still looking for those trends as we do more interviews. We want to find out neuro clinics versus ortho clinics. What if they're MD owned, doctor owned? What if they're a small clinic? How are we seeing those little differences in their budgets, what they're looking for, what are their space needs trend to be? So we'd recommend doing a detailed Excel spreadsheet as you're going through these interviews, and do it as close to the interview as you can, like basically when you get home. That way it's all fresh in your mind, and you're able to just get it all out there on paper. Excel is particularly helpful because if you're doing, here's my ortho clinics and here's my smaller base clinics, you can order it by like, comparing ortho versus ortho doctor owned versus a smaller ortho clinic that's family owned. So that's helpful. We also would suggest, practicing either on your business partner if you have one, or it's usually helpful if you know someone in the field that you can practice with initially so they can give you like feedback, or you'll find out, okay, this isn't clear, because you want to tell them how much time you're going to take for the interview when you're requesting it. And you want to be mindful of their time that they're donating to you. So you want to be as close to on time as you can. And then something we found helpful, especially in the beginning, was recording the interviews. You obviously want to make it clear, ask for permission that you're recording them, but that can be helpful because if there's a particularly confusing thing that happens where their answer kind of goes back and forth, you can go back and listen to it when you're writing it down and see like, okay, I know they were back and forth. Where did they arrive on the conclusion? And I think that's all we have.
One thing that we've run into as of recent, now that we have a website and we have social media, a lot of people are looking at our website and things before we get to interview them. So I would say it's important that when you reach out to these people, kind of just say, oh, we are in the business of such and such, whatever your company is, but don't allude to the name of your company or anything like that, and say, do you mind if we ask you a couple of questions? Leave it very open-ended, because then they won't go ahead and look at your website and look into everything and already know what you're doing and things like that, because that goes back to the leading the witness, because we don't want people to look at our idea and go, oh, yeah, that's nice, like in hindsight, but I don't think I'd actually ever buy it. But we just want to know the true answers. So that's why if you can keep it as broad and as general as possible when you first reach out to them, then afterwards, after you ask your questions, you can tell them about your product and tell them about your ambitions and ideas, and then ask for feedback if they would purchase it and things like that. So that's another subset of questions that you should come up with, is like things about, do you find our product of interest? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Things like that. But ask those after you ask your general questions.
Yeah, and physical therapists we found are very impatient to find out what the product is. So
yeah, not sure if it's like that in whatever companies you guys are forming, but we found that to be a problem. But we work through it. It's all, honestly, like you work through things day by day. We found out a lot of things by trial and error, and by going and actually applying for these different like competitions. So if you have the means to do it and you have the time, I would definitely recommend going for it. Just shoot for the moon. You never know what's going to happen.
do you guys have any questions for us?
So go ahead, everyone else, just turn on your microphone and ask. So before anyone jump in, I have, oh, David, can I have one question for mention to the team, is that so the I-Core Spark that that both Michelle's and Katie's mentioned about, and they actually interviewed 14 peoples on that. And keep in mind, the timing of that is only 3 weeks. There's only 3 weeks program. That means they can jam 14 people, 14 interview in there, okay? So that's a lot of work that go behind the scene for that one. And I have a next question, which is very important. When I heard you guys talking about that, is about, you know, have a website and someone coming in. Do you recommend when you go out and meet with these, doing that customer discovery, do you talk about your product at all, or you just basically just want to dig in and try to find out what the needs are or what their pain points are?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we start, like when we send the initial email or make initial contact, we're saying like, we're not trying to sell you anything. We just want to find out more about your business and see if there's any pain points we can identify. So we go through the whole customer discovery interview part, and we don't mention our product at all. And then at the end, we say like, now that we've asked you these questions, would you like to hear about our ideas? And everyone has said yes so far. And then, you know, we'll say, here's what we're thinking. Can you tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you think can be changed or have questions on? And that's usually how we proceed, because usually if they're willing to take the meeting, they're interested in what you're creating. They want to find out
More about it.
Yeah. And then we've had mentors introduce us, and sometimes they aren't the best about leaving out information. So we get people who have like Googled us and read different articles and looked all at our website. So they sometimes come with questions for us. So I would say, especially in the beginning, you want to be very vague.
Try to keep it as broad as possible.
Yeah, don't mention your social media. Don't mention your website. So.
All right, go ahead, David, for your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michelle. And, I just want to find out if you're going to get access to your PowerPoint presentation, copy of it.
What was that?
Can we get access to a copy of your PowerPoint presentation for today?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely.
We can
send them to Ha and then have her forward them along to you.
David, we had that. Michelle and Katie is generous, is shared with us a while ago, and I've been taking their course of presentation and put in your homework as an example. So you will see more later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So my other question is, so have you been able to price the product yet?
Sorry, you're coming in disconnected.
Have you been able to price your product yet?
Oh, price it?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're still working on that.
We found a price point that we think could be comfortable. we're not sure how realistic it is yet because we haven't been able to go in the lab and actually produce a bunch of our mats yet. But I think we were landing around 100.
Yeah, we were thinking 75 to 100 because we want to be comparable to a product they already own, which is the Eric's Balance Pad. So which is, if you've been to PT, it's that blue foam that they make you stand on and balance on. So we want to present it as, hey, we can replace an existing product, but we offer all these other features. But that's going to be more established when we figure out what's the sustainable material we're looking at for mass production versus right now when we're buying things not in bulk, it's a different cost. So that's something we're going to figure out in August when we get back in the lab and start producing more prototypes. So something to keep in mind, it's going to be different prices when you're at mass production.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll ask a quick question. So first, Michelle and Katie, awesome job. Han and I both really appreciate your time today. We know how busy you are, and we know that the students appreciate it as well, and really was looking forward to your presentation. And as far as even what we're doing in the boot camp, you guys have nailed everything and have even gone above and beyond in explaining everything. So this was really fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you both so much for doing that. And obviously, you know, working and being in school and trying to pursue your idea and grow your business can be extremely difficult. So if you could maybe talk a bit about how did you manage all of that? Maybe what were some obstacles that you have overcome or some challenges? Just because we do know all of our student teams are doing a lot of different things. So do you have any advice for students who may be feeling a bit overwhelmed or maybe hitting some challenges, and basically any tips or tricks for working through those?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of tips that I have is that when we first really started forming our company and actually got some solid members, we solidified a meeting date once a week for 1 to 2 hours every week. We figured of all the time in the week, we can put 2 hours to this. 2 hours is not a lot of time in hindsight. But if we did find that we were having, if we had an exam coming up or we were kind of nervous about something, then our other teammates would be able to step in and do some things for that week. So it's really helpful in numbers. If you have more than 2 or 3 people on your team, it really can be an asset. We also brought on some engineers who have been helping us with the stuff that we really didn't even know how to tackle. So bringing on people that have similar interests, because our engineers want to help in healthcare, but they don't know the physical therapy in and outs like we do. So finding people that have similar interests but different actual expertise is going to be really helpful to you as well. So for when you're overwhelmed or you feel like you can't do this and someone else might be better on the team, then there is someone to fall back on. So things like that are really helpful and important. And then just taking time for yourself too, if you have a lot of things going on that week, just make sure you're practicing self-care all the time.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Michelle was saying when we had an exam coming up, when we were stressed, you want, the teachers, they give you this blueprint of how your semester is going to go. So you want to pay attention to that and say okay, I know I have an exam, so, I want to do work earlier in the semester, and that way I'll have more time to study and I won't have to worry about getting this thing done. For us, what we found really helpful too is we use Google Drive. We haven't used Microsoft Teams, but I know some people use that. You want to use something that's friendly for all your team, Mac and PC. And for us, what we found is really helpful is staying organized with different folders. So we'll have one for each of our different grants and competitions, and then saving applications and stuff and important emails, and also keeping track of when we meet with mentors, just recording all that basically, if you're having a meeting, you want to be taking notes during it, even if it's not a
Exactly.
customer discovery interview.
Yeah.
And that way you can always look back on it.
Funds too. Keeping an Excel of your funds, very
Yeah.
important.
And not to sound too braggy, but keeping a list of all like the little awards you've won. You know, Difference Maker, a lot of times you guys are new to this, you're just starting out, but they can add up pretty quick after you've done Difference Maker. So it's nice to have a list where if a company is interested in you and they're saying, hey, this is a student team, are they actually legit? You can say, look at all this stuff we won and all of our funding, like where it's coming from. You know, we have UMass Lowell, we have MIT, we have VentureWell. That could be really helpful to show like, hey, look at how great our team is.
Making connections is very important.
Yeah. And then I'd say with your customer discovery interviews, you want to make sure that you're saving all of their contact info, maybe just like a little note on how you got the initial connection with them, so that when you do have that product and you're ready to sell, you can reach out to them again and say like, oh, you know, I remember meeting you at this event. Like, would you mind if we could talk more about our product? We have it established now.
And even at the very end of your interviews, like right before you say goodbye, ask them like, do you think you know anyone else that would be interested? And that's how you can get even more contacts and more potential customer interviews.
Yeah, it's a good idea to get it right then and there. You know, it's easier than if they're following up with like an email. Yeah. And then something we found really beneficial for our team is we have a to-do list that we add to each week. And that's really helpful for staying organized on what's accomplished and what's still left to do. And it's a good way to say like, you know, you always have a zillion things for the company you could be doing, but what needs to be done now and what can you put off till next week? So that's really good for staying organized.
Staying afloat. Yeah.
It helps keep you sane.
Awesome. That's great advice. Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And I think the part that you said after every customer interview, the last question you should ask is, you know, of somebody else that I can talk to or get connected with. So again, you guys nailed it. Like, you should be teaching the boot camp. You both, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
So Justin, do you have a question for them? I saw earlier you want to ask questions.
Yeah, so my first question is, when we're doing the customer interviews, we have a list of questions that are very broad and just open about, you know, the specifics that the problems and stuff that deal with horticulture and agriculture. But then you also said after you ask the questions, you could actually mention their product. And I feel I don't want to mention anything at all right now. I just want customer feedback. So are you really recommending I should bring up the product afterwards? Because I'm not selling anything here. I don't want to. I'll come back later. And some of these companies I purchase from now and, you know, are friendly with, I don't want to scare them away or nothing like that. Nor do I want to even mention my company's name or, like you said, the media and social media that goes along with the website and everything. It's not published yet, but so in other words, I just want to make it clear that it's okay to like go back after you get all the customer interview later on, do maybe like a follow-up phone call or an interview, and then discuss your potential company and product with them, not during the initial interview, is the right direction I'm getting from all this.
Yeah, and it's what works for you too. And you also have to think about the customer. So for us, for PTs, like, I don't know if we'd be able to get that second interview without mentioning our product because they're so busy, especially now with COVID. There's a lot more rules on who's allowed in the clinic and things like that. So for us, we just find it beneficial, and the customer wants to know, but your customer group is totally different than ours. So it's, yeah, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, I would say if you're not comfortable with it, but if you keep their contact information and maybe just mention at the end, like, oh, I'd love to call you another time just for further discussion, And you can
Yeah.
leave it at that. I don't think you have to say anything further if you don't feel comfortable.
Okay, that's awesome. And then my second question was, you mentioned after you said Foley and Lardner, you won, there was a competition you entered, and I don't remember the name, the second one after that, Condon or something. I don't know. You mentioned,
Convocation.
yeah, what is it?
So I don't know if that's actually going to be happening this year. Probably not. Or
I don't know how
I
to
don't know.
Holly, I think Holly would be better to answer these questions.
Yeah, so as of now, so Convocation is a big event where all the incoming freshmen are welcome to campus. So it happens right after their move-in weekend, usually the end of August, beginning of September. There's about, 1,500, 2,000 incoming freshmen in the Songus. And we usually pick 3 DifferenceMaker teams to actually pitch to those students as the audience. And then those students text vote for their favorite team, and all 3 teams are awarded funding. So we have different categories. Unfortunately, this year, they're trying to figure out what Convocation is going to look like, obviously because of COVID. So we're not sure that DifferenceMaker will be a part of Convocation this year. But if not, hopefully next year is an opportunity for that. But Matt did a great job, and they won a prize at Convocation. So we'll keep you all posted on that.
That sounds pretty awesome. All right. Yeah, I'll let someone else speak. Thank you so much, and thanks for the presentation. It was very detailed and precise and very structured. It was nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there anyone else have a question? Oh, David, go ahead. Turn your microphone on.
Yeah. Thank you. Just curious. So I want to find out what is the criteria for getting picked to compete in the convocation?
So Ha and I usually will send out an email to the winning teams that year, and then we'll see who is interested in winning, and then we basically go from there, having conversations with the students, seeing who may be best equipped or who may need the money the most. So it's not really a formalized application process, more of a discussion. And then UMass Lowell also likes to see a variety and diversity of different teams. So not all engineering based or not all health based, because we want to make sure that all the student audience is able to connect to at least one of the teams. So we really try to look for diversity with all 3 of the different teams.
Got that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I want to point out to all the team is that DifferenceMaker, the Idea Challenge is not the only one opportunity for you to increase your funding pool. We had a lot of opportunity within UMass Lowell, as well as extended partnership with other. Michelle and Katie's also win at the Beantown Throwdown, which is the competition amongst university within Boston areas as well. So that is we actually got invited from those group as well. So once again, the funding is not an issue here. Opportunity is a lot coming out from DifferenceMaker. We will, send out information to you. We would know what would be best for you to go for, which is fit within your product base and things like that. So don't worry about that. We make sure that you got all the opportunity that are available for you.
Yeah, just to add to that, we didn't know about any of these competitions. It was all Ha and Holly, so they will definitely guide you in the right directions. We now have a good grasp on it now, and we know how to find our own funding now, but they definitely helped us for the whole year last year, so.
Right, we have about 7 minutes left for the sessions today. So is there anyone else have a question for the teams?
I was going to ask just one more.
Go ahead.
Well, when you apply to these competitions, what typically are the requirements for the application that you tend to find or see? Like, is it just written? Is it do a PowerPoint? What do you come in contact with most for the requirements for these applications that you applied for?
So a lot of the application process is written. there's a big variation for how extensive they are. Some are, you know, like a page with answer 5 questions, and some like Venture Well took us a couple weeks, and like involved getting letters of recommendation and getting those approved. So there's a big variation, but majority of application process is written. And then when you get into the grant or whatever the competition is, you'll usually end up doing a PowerPoint. And then sometimes there's like written work you have to do, but usually the application can be more work than the actual grant. For when you're doing the stuff required for that.
And then just also be aware of, like, so if you do get chosen for these, sometimes you'll have only 3 minutes to do your entire PowerPoint. So you should definitely practice, write a script, get it kind of memorized, know what you're going to talk about. Or you could have up to 10 minutes, which is, you know, a lot nicer. You get a lot more time to talk and like figure out where you're going with your train of thought. But just be prepared that some of them, like, they have very little time to talk, and then a lot of it is kind of talked about in the questions and answers afterwards.
And you'll be surprised that you can talk really quick when it's a 90-second presentation and squeeze all that information in.
As long as you practice.
Yeah, we were big into, you know, here's the timer, go. If you don't make it, then you do the presentation over until you're on time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So last question for the team. 5 minutes left. Yep, go ahead, Holly. Do you have?
Oh, no, I don't have anything.
Oh, okay. All right. So thank you very much, Michelle's and Katie's. You are wonderful teams to always bring back and share with the new craft of DifferenceMaker teams here. Once again, thank you everyone to attending it today. I hope that today's presentation would help you going through your own customer discovery journey a little bit easier. Okay, and then get back to us on the next meeting. We will have you look into questionnaire, looking into your target group, your feedback and things like that. All right, thanks again for the session today.
Thank you for having us, everyone.
If you have any
questions.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.
You too. Have a good one.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Everyone.